All right, you're looking at former governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich. He has a very interesting perspective on a lot of things. We'll get to him in a moment. First, take a look at what's erupting coast to coast, right? Pro-Hamas rallies, right? Protests even. I've even seen skirmishes. I've seen some violence here in America. And take a look at this. Black Lives Matter. Remember how many corporations signed up for that nonsense? Well, here's Black Lives Matter, a chapter of it. I stand with Palestine, and glorifying that one of those terrorists parachuting into the concert, the rave, shot it all up. This branch of Black Lives Matter based in Chicago, and that is where Governor Blagojevich is tonight. Hey, sir, welcome back. How are you?
I'm fine. It's nice to talk to you again, Greg. How you been?
Pretty good. And you know what? It's interesting. I think you do have a unique perspective based on all of your experience. You know, you were wrongly prosecuted. You had to go to jail, but you found out a lot about this country and a lot about people and a lot about race, my sense, while you were there. What do you make of this new tweet, and where do things stand overall in America?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for saying that, setting the record straight, because you're right. I didn't break the law, cross the line, or take a penny. I wouldn't give in. I stood up and fought back. And I did learn a lot through this long, hard journey. And, you know, I was the Democratic governor, first one elected in Illinois in 2002, a very, very different Democratic Party back then. I'm really proud of the fact that when I was a congressman, the NAACP gave me a 90% rating. And yet I see today's Democrat Party, I see this thing, that the Chicago chapter of the Black Lives Matter tweeted out, I stand with Palestine, with that glider, celebrating what happened to those poor young people who were at that concert, not to mention all the others who've been victimized by this wicked act by a terrorist organization. And not only does it make me sick, but I'm calling on my Democratic leaders, members of my party, to not only condemn this, but they ought to kick out this chapter out of the Democrat Party. Imagine if this was the KKK or the Nazi Party saying something like this and putting a tweet out like that, how the outrage would be. So why don't we apply the same kind of outrage against this group for doing what they just did, celebrating the wickedness and the evil that was done to innocent Jewish people?
You know, I wish Barack Obama made good on the promise that he was going to address race relations in a more honest way. He didn't. Instead, he exploited race. So here you and I are, too. We happen to be white. And, you know, I think we can talk about race. He's not. So many people are afraid to. I want to ask you, from your perspective, in prison and elsewhere, there does seem to be a tension between Jews and elements of the far left, particularly, in the Black Lives Matter movement, particularly in areas of the black community. But it's never discussed. Somehow that's off limits. First of all, am I right in my observations about BLM and anti-Semitism?
No, you're very right. It's very real within that part of the Democratic constituency, Black Lives Matter. And I would suggest to you, Greg, that Black Lives Matter isn't just black people in it. There's a lot of left-wing socialist white people. The thing that brings them together is this sort of socialist worldview that's predicated not only on economics, but on dividing people along the lines of their skin color, their gender, their sexual orientation. They're not uniters, they're dividers, and they're filled with hate. And that tweet, I think, not only points that out, but it really symbolizes what they stand for. And again, if you're a Democrat and you're behind the kind of principles that made us all Democrats, and part of it is to frankly embrace Dr. King's dream of judging people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, the Democrat leaders, Biden, our Governor Pritzker, who happens to be Jewish, and all the others ought to come down hard on this BLM, and they ought to kick them out of the Democratic Party. There should be no room in the Democratic Party for an organization like that, at least that chapter in Chicago that put out that tweet today, because nobody would tolerate the KKK or the Nazi Party, nor should they.
Well, you should really follow Governor Blagojevich on Twitter, @RodBlagojevich. And, hey, very quickly, can you tell us, I think you had a chance encounter with President Trump when you were governor and he was just a tourist in Chicago, and something happened that, well, we're glad it happened. What happened?
Well, I was actually in New York. I was at Madison Square Garden. I was the governor. It was my first year. It was riding high. People were actually talking about me as a presidential candidate before Obama, because I was a little bit before Obama, 2 years before. And anyway, I was raising money in New York where all that Democrat money is, and my host brought me to Madison Square Garden to watch a boxing match. My security detail got ahead of me to to get a hold of a freight elevator to get me out of Madison Square Garden quickly. In that freight elevator was Donald Trump, very recognizable, with this beautiful, tall, striking woman with this jet black hair. I remember thinking to myself as I approached that elevator, man, this guy's something else. He dates the most beautiful women. And then my security detail kicked him out of that freight elevator. He complied because they were the police, and he stood on the side. I had the elevator, and thank goodness, Greg, I'm basically a nice guy. I said, please come in and take a ride with us. I shudder to think what would have happened had I not invited him onto that elevator, because he later freed me from prison.
It's awesome. You're a good guy, and well, God notices and sees everything, and I do believe. Great story, and thank you. To be continued, Governor Blagojevich, and we'll be right back.